place at one time. Amongst the rocks on the Matopo Mountains, you find a species of lizard which you don't find anywhere in Africa or the world. A species of lizard which responds to the call of a human being. When I first arrived in 1958 in the land called Rhodesia, now known as Zimbabwe, I found an African there who was a tourist attraction. He was a game warden who made strange sounds, calling out, and as he called out, these strange lizards, the only type of lizard anywhere on earth which responds to the human voice, used to come out of cracks and out of holes in the ground and to gather around this African. And it was this African game warden who told me that the sounds he is making are not just noise, they are the speech of the CHITAURI star gods.
Isn't it a staggering coincidence that Cecil Rhodes, one of the greatest Illuminati frontmen, perhaps certainly of modern times, who did so much to imprison Africa, should choose to be buried at the point where this is all going on?
You see, sir, Cecil John Rhodes wormed his way into the hearts of Africans, and in their despair, wise men of the Mashona people, wise men of Matebele people, tried to make Cecil John Rhodes one of them. They told him about the secrets of the Matopo Mountains, that under the Matopo Mountains lies a city of great wisdom, which is the home of the last survivors of the CHITAURI god beings in that part of Africa. And if you go to the Matopo Mountains and you carry a 4-pound hammer and you strike certain parts of that landscape with that hammer, it gives out a hollow sound which shows you that there are caverns deep underground there. There are two sets of mountains. There is the Matopo Mountains, and then to the east of Zimbabwe there are the great mountains known as the Inyangani, the Weeping Moon Mountains. There, even now, people disappear without trace. Sometimes a person would disappear for several days and reappear a few days later, not knowing where he had been or where she had been. And white people have disappeared there. Black people in their thousands have disappeared there. It was there that I also went missing for 4 days in 1959 in one of the most traumatic experiences of my life.
What happened?
Well, it's a long story, sir. My teacher, Elizabeth Moyo, had sent me to get a special herb which grows only on the foothills of those mountains. It was just an ordinary day like any other, just beautiful day like this one outside here. And I love the African wilderness. I'm at home in the bush, especially in the days when I was still in good health. I love the animals. I love their smell, and I love the smell of the vegetation. And I was looking for this herb when all of a sudden a bright blue mist fell all around me. It took me some time to react to this strange thing. It was a hot day, and all of a sudden the temperature around me dropped. It was as if I was on the slope of a very cold mountain, but it was a warm day. And then the next moment, I was in what appeared to be a metal-lined tunnel, a curving tunnel, and I was lying on what looked like a workbench, a very large workbench of some kind, you know, an iron table which an engineer or somebody working with metal would use for welding and cutting metal upon. But this workbench was very brightly polished, and there I was lying there with my trousers missing and only my khaki shirt, when I saw again through what appeared to be like blue mist a number of moving objects, which at first I thought were dolls. And these objects were moving towards me. I noticed with mild surprise that they were very thin, short, human-like creatures with very, very large melon-shaped heads. The creatures had no noses, as human beings have. They had only small little holes on either side of where the nose would be, and their mouths were like knife cuts at the bottom of their faces. And these creatures were coming towards me. In color, they were gray, like certain types of fish, and they wore silvery gray garments which reached up to their necks and up to their wrists. I couldn't see whether they were wearing boots or not at that time. And while I was looking at these creatures, I suddenly was aware that something was above me, standing there, and I looked up straight into the face of one of them, a much taller one than the others. And this creature was wearing a garment like a tight-fitting overall without any buttons or anything, which reached up to its neck, but its wrists were bare. I noticed that the creature had very long fingers. Its fingers had and each of its fingers had an extra joint, and it ended in a claw, a black claw like that of a chicken or a certain kind of bird, and that its thumb was not here, but here in the middle of the hand. And this thing was standing above my head and looking down at me, and I was looking at its eyes, which were very strange indeed. It was as if it was wearing plastic goggles over its eyes. I could see its eyes inside these tinted goggles, and it had holes on either side here, but it had no nose as I have. Its jaws were very small, and its mouth was a slit with tiny little scale-like things where its lips should be. And the creature carried a horrible smell on it. I can't describe that smell. It was a metallic, chemically smell, which seemed to combine the smell you would smell when somebody is burning brass or copper, and a very ugly chemical smell, these two smells combined. And this creature was looking down at me. I was frightened, but I could not move. And the next thing I knew was a terrible pain on my left thigh. It was as if somebody had just stabbed me right to the bone. I screamed and I tried to jump away, but my body was My body was inactive. I could not move. I was not tied to any chain. I was not chained to the top of this table. There was no belt tying me, but I could not move my body. And when I looked down at what was happening, I found that one of the shorter creatures had driven something very painful into my left thigh. And then, while I watched, horrified, the creature pulled out this thing, and I saw that it was like a pencil made of shining metal with what appeared to be a flexible cable at the back. And before I could do anything, sir, my head was seized by the creature above me. It caught me on either side of the head like this. And then a third creature drove something into my right nostril here. It was as if I had been shot. The pain was so terrible, sir, that I screamed and screamed. Blood filled my mouth, blood spattered out of the nostril, and the creature did not seem to care. I was stupefied. The pain was so intense, so terrible. And then, quietly, brutally, the creature pulled out the thing that it had stabbed me in the nose with, and blood flowed into my mouth, out of my nostril, and I was choking. And then the big creature coldly turned my head this way, so that blood came out of the mouth, and which gave me some kind of relief. And after what seemed like an eternity of pain, the creature brought something out of somewhere which looked like an old-fashioned tea strainer in appearance, and it put this thing close to my nose. And then I seemed to drift away, and the pain subsided. You know, sir, it was torture so intense that even now I can't describe it. And then something else happened. A fourth creature started rummaging between my legs, and it pulled out my organ of manhood and stuck something into that. It was very strange, but I wasn't feeling any pain now. But I could feel the flexible cable moving inside me, right into my body. And then, I can't describe it. It was as if my seed was being sucked out by this small, bright, flexible cable. And then the creature just pulled it out. I screamed and I cried and I screamed, but I could not move. And then something happened which to this day still amazes me. After the creature had pulled out the flexible cable from my organ, the creature just stood there looking at my organ. And I was so terrified that I urinated, and accidentally urinated against the chest of the creature. It jumped away as if I had shot it, and it stumbled backwards. But its face didn't show any expression. Its mouth didn't even open, but the way the creature reacted, trembling all over, it was as if I had really hurt it. But it was wearing this kind of garment. And after that, I was left alone, except for the big creature which stood to my right side this time, with its arms folded, looking down at me. And then, while I was looking at this creature, trying to appeal to it, no pain anymore, no pain, please, I was pleading. Pictures suddenly flooded my mind. Pictures of buildings sunk in a red lake of water. Buildings rotting away. Buildings that appeared as if they had been bombed. And cities sunk in terrible mud. Trees sticking out like rotten ghosts. Trees without leaves, without branches, sticking out of the mud as if they had been poisoned. I saw visions of this. And then, through an entrance which I had not seen before, came a strange and terrible beings. It was exactly like this. It was tall, made entirely of metal, with burning eyes and a snout. It didn't do anything. It just moved and came to stand at my left side. It didn't touch me or anything like that. It just stood there, making a strange humming sound. Wow, 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 like that. And then, from behind this metal creature, there appeared another creature. It was so radically different from the grey creatures in that it looked exactly like an earthly human being. It had a pink skin like that of a white woman. It had golden hair, and its ears were definitely pointed like those of an animal. Its eyes were slightly slanting. They were pale, pale blue, and never once did they blink. It was like this, nude, and there was a tail-like appendage at its back, which was very visible as it walked away after it had done to me what it did. What this thing did, it climbed over me and made love to me. And I noticed that unlike normal women, its breasts were set too high in its chest, and they were very, very hard in appearance. And that here, the pubic hair as well as the hair in the armpits was a fiery red, as if it had been dyed. And this thing didn't even blink. Its eyes were just like this, looking at you as if there was no liquid in the eyes. Just an unblinking, terrible stare. And it was a small creature, about the size of a 16-year-old girl. But it was very, very heavy as it sat on top of me. And there was no emotion in that whole nonsense. There was no, I just... And then the creatures took me out of that room after the metal creature and this pink creature had gone. This creature took me out of that room, assisted by another one. And they pushed me along a corridor which curved slowly in that direction, towards my right. And There I was shown many things which even today I don't understand. I was shown little versions of this creature swimming in huge cylinders made out of what looked like glass, in a pinkish liquid, like ugly little frogs inside the liquid. They looked like aborted human fetuses. They were very, very terrible and disgusting. And then we came to another room, and there I saw a number of people undergoing the same torture that I had undergone. One particular person whom I passed very close to was a white man, definitely a European, with a yellowish beard and moustache and long, straggly blood-crusted hair. This man looked into my eyes and I looked into his eyes, and we were so close we were as I went past him. Then, to cut a long story short, I found myself in the bush again. But I was wearing only my shirt. My boots were gone, and so was my trousers. So I took off my shirt and wore it around my waist as a loincloth. And I started traveling, not knowing really in which direction I was going. Then I came to a track, and I walked along that. And some time later, I saw people coming towards me. It was a group of young men and young women, Mashona people, and they were going to a trading store, I later learned. I asked them where Elizabeth Moyo's homestead was, and they directed me to it. But they kept a safe distance away from me. And later I learned why. I was carrying a horrible, non-human smell upon me. When at long last I came to Mrs. Moyo's village, all the dogs in that place went hysterical. They came at me in a pack, wanting to tear me to pieces. And only the villagers managed to save my life there. Mrs. Moyo asked me where I had been, and I said I did not know. And then she said, I know you had been taken by the little ones. I said, yes. I cannot understand. She said, you must not try to understand. You were chosen by the gods as a living sacrifice. So don't even try to talk about this. But how could I not talk about it? I wanted to understand what had been done to me, by whom and why. Even now, sir, I still want to understand what it was all about. And many years later, I met a remarkable white woman, Elizabeth Clara, a famous South African woman who had worked for British intelligence during the war, and who, we are told, had been impregnated by a being from the stars, Akon. I asked Elizabeth what was the meaning of the strange thing which was done to me, because since that time I had come across many black people, well over 200, who had been through the same torture as I. I had come across many black as well as Cape-colored women who had been mysteriously impregnated by the same creatures that I had gone through the hands of. And let me tell you one other interesting thing, sir, before I forget. About a year after I had underwent this terrible experience, I was walking along Jeppe Street in Johannesburg delivering parcels when a white man shouted at me to stop. I stopped. I thought he was a policeman wanting to arrest me for some reason. And when I tried to produce my identity document, the white man said, "Listen, I don't want your nasty word, passbook kefa." I said, "Then sir, what do you want, boss?" He said, "Listen, where did I see you? Where did I see you?" I said, "I don't know, boss." But he looked very familiar to me. And then he said, "Listen, don't bullshit me, man. Where did I see you? Where did you and I meet?" Then I said to him, "I saw you in Rhodesia, in a certain place. You were lying on a table. If I had hit that white man with a fist, he would not have reacted the way he did. He went pale, almost dirty gray in appearance, and he turned away with a terrible, dirty word, and he walked away. His eyes were filled not with anger, sir, but with pure, naked terror."
Astonishing story.
Yes, sir. But there is more, sir. There is more, because I still want to know what was done to me. Sir, one day you and I must talk more, in greater depth than now. I would like to tell you that since that time, I have found that I know things that a man of my standard of education shouldn't know. These hands, and those who know me can confirm this, these hands not only have made these sculptures using ancient African metal casting secrets. These hands, believe it or not, can make guns and working jet engines. And one day I wish you to come back to South Africa and I will show you one of these things. I know things which I shouldn't know, and it started at that time. Now, you see, sir, I want to know, what am I? Since that terrible time, my life as a man was really messed up. And one day let me tell you, sir, since that time, I have become a very confused creature. It's embarrassing, really. But since that terrible day, I became bisexual, which to me as an African is very, very disgusting. Since that time, my mind doesn't seem to be my own. I think about things that a man like me shouldn't bother himself about. I worry about people. It's sickening. I have ruined my life because of worrying about people. I feel that I want to to take every human being on this earth by the shoulders, shake them roughly and say, listen, Pastor, there is more to this earth than you think. Say, I have seen the CHITAURI. I have smelt them. I have